He woke up early as he did every morning. The sky was still dark and quiet as he stepped out of his small home. He carried the same worn bag he had used for years and walked the familiar path toward the factory. Where he worked, his life was simple and predictable. He did not have much money, and he did not have anyone to rely on except his own hands and his determination. The streets were empty at this hour, but he liked it. The silence gave him time to think about the day ahead. He passed by shops that would soon open and children who were still asleep in their beds. He wondered if any of them knew how hard life could be. He had learned to keep his thoughts to himself and to work quietly without expecting recognition. Most people ignored him, but he had grown used to it. At the factory, he greeted the few workers who arrived before him. They nodded politely, but there was no warmth in their eyes. He understood that life had made people cautious and self-centered. He went straight to his station and began his work. It was repetitive and tiring, but he did it with care. He believed that no matter how small the job seemed, someone depended on it, and it deserved attention. After a few hours, the manager came by and checked on the workers. He barely looked at him and asked him to speed up his work. The man nodded and continued. He did not complain or argue. He had learned that complaining changed nothing, and that patience often brought more than anger. Could the day pass slowly, and he felt the familiar exhaustion settle in his body, but he did not let it stop him. He moved with purpose, and he kept his mind steady. During his break, he sat outside in a quiet corner. He watched the world go by, and he thought about the life he wanted. He did not dream of luxury or fame. He dreamed of respect and dignity. He dreamed of a day when his hard work could be seen and valued. He believed that one day opportunity would come to him, but he did not rush it. He knew that life rewarded those who stayed true to themselves. One afternoon, as he left the factory, he noticed a man standing near the entrance. He was dressed differently from anyone he had ever seen. His clothes were neat and expensive, and there was an air of authority around him. The man watched the workers with a quiet intensity. He looked at him for a moment and then turned away. He felt a strange feeling of curiosity and unease. He wondered who this man was and why he was watching. The next day, the same man appeared. Again, this time he approached him and spoke. He did not reveal his name or his purpose. He asked simple questions about his life, about his work, about the things that mattered to him. He listened carefully to his answers without judgment. He seemed genuinely interested, and this surprised him. Most people never cared about his life or his thoughts over. The next few days, the man continued to appear. He never imposed or demanded. He simply observed and asked questions. He watched how he treated others, how he handled difficulties, how he responded when no one was looking. He saw him return a lost wallet. He saw him help a coworker who was struggling. He saw him refuse shortcuts that could have made his work easier but compromised its quality. Each time the man appeared, he seemed more intrigued. At first, he did not understand why this stranger was paying attention to him. He was used to being invisible to the world. He thought maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe he was mistaken, but as the days passed, he realized that this man was different. He was not like anyone else. He did not care about appearances or titles. He seemed to be looking for something deeper, something that could not be measured by money or power. One morning, the man invited him to walk with him. He agreed without hesitation. There was a strange sense of trust between them, though they had barely spoken. The man asked about his family, about his dreams, about his fears. He spoke honestly, without exaggeration. He did not try to impress. He simply told the truth, and the man listened. He felt a strange comfort in being heard, in being understood. Without being judged during their walk, they passed through crowded streets and quiet parks. They saw people rushing to their work and children playing in the distance. He noticed the man observing not just him, but the world around them. He seemed to notice the small details, the kindnesses, the struggles, the moments that most people ignored. He explained little, but he asked questions that made him think. He asked what he would do if he had the power to change things, what he valued more than anything else, what he would never compromise. He had never been asked such questions before. He had never been given the chance to speak without fear of judgment or ridicule. He found himself thinking deeply about his choices, about his character, about the life he wanted to lead. He realized that he had principles that he had followed without even naming them. He realized that his actions mattered more than he had ever imagined. Days turned into weeks, and the encounters continued. He began to look forward to seeing the man. He was not seeking approval or reward. He simply felt that someone finally saw him. He felt that his life mattered in a way that it had never mattered before. The man never pressured him. He never told him what to do. He simply observed and allowed him to be himself. One evening, as the sun was setting, the man asked him a question that stayed with him long after he returned home. He asked what he would do if no one was watching. If no one cared, if no reward would come from his choices, what would he do? He thought about it carefully. He realized that he had already answered that question every day of his life, in the way he treated people, in the way he did his work, in the way he lived quietly and honestly. The thought gave him a strange sense of pride. He realized that integrity was not something that depended on recognition or reward. It was something that defined him even when the world ignored him. He felt a quiet confidence growing inside him, a sense that he could face whatever came next with dignity and courage. The man continued to visit and observe. He never forced anything. He never revealed his intentions. He seemed content to let him live his life as he always had, but with a subtle awareness that something significant was happening. He could feel that his life was on the brink of change, though he did not know what form it would take. He only knew that someone powerful had noticed him, and that noticing was rare and precious. Through these simple interactions, he began to understand a truth that many people never learn. He realized that who he was mattered more than what he had. He realized that patience and honesty and quiet strength could open doors that talent and ambition alone could not. He felt a sense of purpose he had never felt before. He knew that the coming days might bring challenges, but he felt ready because he had discovered something invaluable about himself. So his life continued in the ordinary routines of work and rest. But now there was a subtle shift. He moved with awareness. He spoke with intention. He observed the world more deeply, and he valued the small acts of kindness and courage in himself and others. He did not know what the future held, but he felt that the encounter with the mysterious man had set him on a path that could lead to something extraordinary. He continued to wake early every day to walk the familiar streets and perform his work with care. He continued to live quietly and honestly without expectation. He carried in his heart a new sense of possibility and hope. The man had tested nothing yet, but in the way he looked at him, he felt that the first seed had been planted, a seed that could grow into a life beyond what he had ever imagined. And in the quiet moments before sleep, he thought about the encounters and the questions, and he understood that life could be unpredictable and full of surprises. He understood that sometimes those who change your life do not arrive with fanfare or announcement. They simply appear and notice and observe. And in doing so, they reveal the best in you even before you know it yourself. He went to bed that night with a sense of anticipation and calm. He did not know what would come next. He did not need to know. He only knew that his life had shifted ever so slightly, that someone powerful had seen him for who he truly was, and that realization gave him strength and patience and a quiet courage to continue living as he always had. He had no idea that the first part of a remarkable journey had begun, and that the choices he had made every day without recognition had already set the stage for a future that would test him in ways he could not yet imagine, a future where his character would matter more than any skill or wealth or connection. A future that could change everything. Days after their walks felt different. He noticed the world around him more keenly, the sounds of the streets, the expressions on people's faces. The small gestures of kindness or frustration all seemed more important. Somehow he wondered if it was because of the mysterious man, or because he had begun to see things he had never paid attention to before. He felt a quiet excitement, but he did not know why. One morning as he walked to work, he saw the man standing by the side of the street waiting for him. He approached cautiously, wondering what this visit could mean. The man smiled but said nothing. He simply gestured for him to walk alongside. He followed without hesitation. There was a rhythm to their steps as they moved through the streets together, and he felt a strange sense of comfort in this silent companionship. As they walked, the man asked him about his work, about the people he worked with, about how he handled challenges. He answered honestly, without thinking about pleasing him or hiding anything. He spoke about the long hours, the physical exhaustion, the unfair treatment, and the small moments of satisfaction when a task was done well. He spoke about how he had learned to be patient and how he had learned to trust himself. When no one else seemed to care, the man listened closely and then asked a question that made him pause. What would you do if someone offered you an easy way to succeed, something that could change your life, but required you to compromise your values? He thought about it carefully and said he would refuse. He could not. Imagine betraying his own principles, even if it meant missing an opportunity. The man nodded and said nothing more at that moment, but the look in his eyes made him feel that he had passed a silent test. The following days brought small challenges that seemed ordinary but felt significant. He found a lost purse on the street and returned it to its owner. Even though no one saw him do it, a coworker asked him to take credit for work he had not done, and he refused. Politely, a customer tried to cheat him in a small way, and he corrected the mistake without anger. He noticed that these small decisions felt heavier now, as if each choice mattered more than before. He began to feel a strange pressure from within, not from anyone else, but from himself. He wanted to do the right thing, even when it was difficult. He wanted to act with integrity, even when it was inconvenient. He realized that these were not choices that anyone else could make for him. They were his alone, and they defined who he was. He felt a growing sense of responsibility to be the best version of himself, even in small matters. Evening, the man invited him to a quiet cafe. They sat together and drank tea. He watched the man observe the people around them, the way he noticed their moods, their gestures, their expressions. He felt a deep curiosity about how someone could see so much without saying a word. The man asked him what he valued most, and he thought about it. For a long time, he realized that he valued honesty, patience, and kindness more than anything else. The man then asked him to describe a moment when he had faced a moral choice and how he had handled it. He spoke about a time at work when he had been tempted to take a shortcut that could have made his task easier, but might have caused problems for others. He explained how he had chosen to do the harder right thing instead of the easier wrong thing. He noticed the man nodding approvingly, and he felt a quiet pride in his decision. The next week, the man arranged a different kind of challenge. A situation arose at the factory where a mistake could have been blamed on him. He had the choice to stay silent and let someone else take responsibility, or to speak the truth and risk his own position. He hesitated for a moment, but then chose to tell the truth. He explained what had happened and accepted the consequences calmly. He did not argue or justify. He simply stated the facts and acted with integrity to surprise the situation. Resolved without punishment, he noticed that his colleagues began to treat him differently. They seemed to respect his honesty, even if they did not say it out loud. The man watched closely and later explained that he had passed another test. He realized that these tests were not about him pleasing the man, but about discovering who he truly was. He felt a sense of accomplishment, but also a deeper understanding of himself. Following days brought more subtle challenges he was asked to help with. A difficult task that others avoided, he agreed without complaint, even though it meant extra work. He noticed the satisfaction in completing something that had seemed impossible. He realized that his own effort and determination mattered more than anyone else's recognition. He felt a growing confidence in his ability to handle difficulties without compromising his principles. One morning, the man asked him to accompany him on a trip outside the city. They traveled by train and walked through unfamiliar streets. He noticed the man observing how he interacted with strangers, how he treated waiters, how he responded to unexpected situations. He saw that even small acts of courtesy and patience were being watched. He realized that every action he took now seemed more meaningful than before. During the trip, they came across a street where a child was crying. The child had lost a small toy and was afraid to ask for help. The man watched as he approached the child calmly. He spoke gently and helped the child find the toy. He returned it, and the child smiled. He felt a warm satisfaction, not because anyone noticed, but because he had done the right thing. The man watched silently and seemed pleased, but said nothing. He let the action speak for itself. Later that day, the man asked him about his dreams, about what he wanted from life. He spoke honestly that he wanted a life of dignity that allowed him to care for himself and perhaps one day help others. He did not speak of wealth or fame. He spoke of respect and opportunity and the ability to live without fear or compromise. The man listened carefully and asked questions that made him think more deeply about his values and priorities. Man then set up a situation to test his reaction. To temptation, a small opportunity appeared that could have brought him a large reward if he bent the rules. He noticed the offer, but he hesitated. He thought about the principles he had been living by and refused the easy gain. He realized that this choice was harder than any previous one because the reward was tempting and visible. He chose honesty and patience again, and felt a deep sense of integrity. The man watched this quietly, and later explained that true character reveals itself. Under pressure, he understood now that the tests were designed to see how he acted when no one else could see the consequences, or when no immediate reward was present. He felt a deep respect for the process he realized that life often presents. These moments without warning, and that his consistent choices had shaped him more than he had known. Days turned into weeks, and the encounters continued. The man never forced him to act in a certain way. He simply presented situations and observed. How he responded, he noticed that he was becoming more mindful of his decisions. He noticed that small acts of honesty and kindness began to define his daily life. He felt more aware of the impact of his actions and more confident in his ability to live by his principles. One afternoon, the man presented a challenge that tested his patience. He was asked to complete a tedious task that seemed endless and repetitive. He felt frustration rising, but he continued without complaint. He focused on the quality of his work rather than the inconvenience. He realized that patience and persistence were not just virtues, but tools that shaped his character and his future. He felt a growing sense of accomplishment in completing something difficult. Without cutting corners, the man then asked him to reflect on his actions on the trip, and in the days following, he spoke about the choices he had made about honesty, patience, kindness, and responsibility. He realized that these were not actions he had performed to impress the man, but habits that had been formed through years of living carefully and thoughtfully. He understood that true integrity comes from consistency and commitment to values rather than from recognition. The final moments came with a quiet conversation. He was asked what he would do if someone offered him an opportunity to change his life in an instant. If there was a reward, but only if he abandoned his principles, he reflected deeply and said he would refuse. He understood now that his life mattered more when lived with honesty and patience than when altered by shortcuts or deception. He felt a deep sense of self-awareness and readiness for whatever challenges might come next. And so the days continued. With subtle tests and small revelations, he moved through life with greater awareness. He noticed the world more clearly. He treated people with kindness and patience. He acted with integrity even when no one else watched. He realized that these choices mattered more than wealth or recognition. He felt a growing confidence and quiet courage that prepared him for the next stage of his journey. Did not yet know what the future held or what the ultimate purpose of these tests would be. He only knew that the experiences were shaping him. He only knew that each choice strengthened his character and revealed his true self. He began to understand that the life-changing moment might not be immediate, but that his consistent actions and decisions were quietly preparing him for something extraordinary. Went to sleep each night reflecting on the lessons of the day and anticipating the opportunities that might come. He felt a sense of purpose and calm. He understood that the tests were not punishments or challenges to prove worth to someone else. They were invitations to discover his own values and to live by them. He felt a quiet determination to continue living with integrity and patience, knowing that the choices he made now would define the person he was becoming. And so he continued through each day with mindfulness and care. He continued to work and help others. He continued to face challenges with patience and courage. He continued to grow and learn. He did not know the end of the journey yet, but he felt that something remarkable was unfolding quietly and steadily in his life, and that the lessons of these small tests would guide him when the moment of change finally arrived. The days after the trip felt heavier and more meaningful. He noticed that every small decision now carried weight. Even when no one else was watching, he found himself pausing before taking action. Considering whether it was right and fair, he realized that the man had not given him instructions or advice. He had simply observed and created situations that allowed him to discover his own character. He felt a quiet sense of responsibility for his choices. One morning he was faced with a problem. At work that seemed impossible, a machine had broken down and the workers were frustrated. The manager was angry and threatened punishment if the work was not completed on time. He felt pressure to find a quick solution that might have involved cutting corners or ignoring safety protocols. He paused and thought about what he had learned about integrity and patience. He chose to solve the problem carefully and honestly. He worked alongside his colleagues, explaining what needed to be done and ensuring that nothing was compromised. The process was slow and tiring, but he did not give up. He noticed the other workers watching and some even joining him and following his example. They began to cooperate and focus on the task rather than complain. He realized that his choices influenced others in ways he had not expected. His actions inspired them to act with care and patience even in a difficult situation. He felt a sense of quiet pride in leading by example, without trying to assert authority. During lunch, the man appeared quietly and observed from a distance. He said nothing, but his presence made him more aware of his own actions. He felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. He knew that the man was watching not to judge, but to understand who he truly was. He remembered the questions about honesty and courage and realized that these tests were becoming more complex. He had to act rightly even under pressure when the consequences were unclear. After the work was done, the manager approached him and asked how he had managed to handle the situation. He explained calmly, without exaggeration or seeking praise. He simply described what had happened and how he had worked with his colleagues. The manager nodded, but said little. He noticed that his words were honest and direct, and that no one could question them. He felt a growing sense of confidence in facing challenges without deception. That evening he walked home slowly, reflecting on the day. I thought about how small choices had made a difference. He realized that integrity was not just a concept but a daily practice. It required patience, courage, and self-awareness. He understood that life would continue to present situations that tested these qualities, and that his consistent approach was shaping his character in ways that were becoming more evident. The following week, the man invited him to a quiet park. They sat on a bench and observed people passing by. He noticed how the man paid attention to interactions, the way strangers treated each other, the small acts of kindness, and the moments of selfishness. He realized that life was full of opportunities to act rightly. Even when unnoticed, he reflected on his own actions and felt a deep sense of responsibility for his behavior in everyday life. During their time together, the man asked him what he would do if someone important asked him to do something against his principles. He thought carefully and said that he would refuse. Understood that true success was not measured by wealth or approval, but by the ability to remain true to oneself. He felt a quiet confidence knowing that he had faced similar situations in small ways and had always chosen honesty and patience. Day at the factory, a new situation arose. A coworker tried to involve him in a small act that could have been seen as dishonest. He recognized the temptation and the risk of getting ahead by accepting it. He thought about the lessons from the man, about integrity and courage. He refused politely and explained why he could not participate. He noticed the disappointment in the coworker, but he did not waver. He felt a sense of calm knowing he had made the right choice. Later that evening, man appeared at his door. He asked him to accompany him on a walk through the city. He agreed, and they moved through crowded streets and quiet alleys. He noticed that the man observed how he interacted with strangers, how he treated people in minor situations. He realized that the smallest actions were under observation and that true character showed itself in these moments. He felt a growing awareness of how important consistency was in his choices. During the walk, they encountered a street vendor who had dropped some coins. The man watched as he picked them up and returned them without hesitation. He spoke gently to the vendor and helped organize the items that had fallen. He realized that honesty and kindness were not separate from daily life but intertwined with every small decision. He felt a quiet satisfaction in doing what was right, even when unnoticed. The man then asked him to reflect on a time when he had been tempted to act differently than his principles demanded. He thought about moments in the past where shortcuts or dishonesty had seemed easy. He realized that he had mostly resisted these temptations even without understanding why at the time. He understood now that his choices had been guided by an inner sense of integrity that had always been present. The following days brought a series of subtle challenges. He was asked to complete tasks that required patience and precision. He faced situations where he could have acted selfishly for immediate gain. He noticed that resisting these impulses required focus and self-control. He realized that these were not just tests, but opportunities to strengthen his character and to live according to the values he had chosen for himself. One afternoon, a situation arose where someone tried to blame him for a mistake he did not make. He had the choice to stay silent and avoid trouble, or to explain the truth, even though it could have caused friction. He chose to speak honestly. He calmly described what had happened and accepted responsibility only for what was truly his doing, so required courage and humility. He realized that facing challenges openly and honestly created trust, even when it was difficult. The man observed all of this quietly, and later spoke about the importance of integrity under pressure. He explained that the way a person acts when there is no reward or recognition reveals true character. He reflected on his own actions and realized that the lessons he was learning were not just about passing tests, but about becoming a person who could face life with honesty and courage. During a quiet evening walk, he thought about the small acts of kindness he had performed, the moments when he chose patience over frustration, honesty over convenience, courage over fear. He realized that these decisions were shaping his life more than any immediate reward could. He felt a growing sense of self-respect and inner strength. He understood that true success was built quietly and consistently over time. The man then created a more difficult test. He arranged a situation where he could gain a reward by bending rules or compromising his values. The temptation was strong and visible. He felt the weight of the choice keenly. He considered the possible outcomes, the ease of accepting the reward, and the cost of abandoning his principles. He chose honesty and integrity again, despite the difficulty. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction in making the right choice, even when it was hard. He began to understand that these tests were not random. They were carefully designed to reveal not what he could achieve with shortcuts, but what he could become through consistent right action. He realized that life often presents choices that test patience, courage, and integrity, and that his ability to navigate these situations defined who he was becoming. In the following days, he continued to face subtle challenges. He noticed how the people around him reacted to his actions. Some were inspired by his example, others were indifferent or critical. He understood that the opinions of others were secondary to his own principles. He felt a growing confidence in his ability to live with integrity, regardless of external recognition or reward. One afternoon, the man asked him to describe what he had learned about himself in the past weeks. He spoke about patience, honesty, courage, and the quiet strength that comes from consistent right action. He realized that his character was not fixed but shaped by daily decisions. He understood that the journey he was on required vigilance, awareness, and commitment to values. Man then asked him to imagine a future where he could face even greater challenges. He thought about the temptations and pressures that might come. He realized that his ability to remain true to his principles would be tested. More and more as his life changed, he felt a sense of readiness and determination to face whatever came with honesty and courage. Days turned into weeks, and the experiences continued to shape him. He noticed that he was more aware of his surroundings, more careful in his decisions, more compassionate in his interactions. He realized that the lessons were not just for passing a test, but for preparing him for a life that required integrity, patience, and courage. He felt a quiet anticipation for the next stage of his journey. He continued to work and live quietly, applying what he had learned. He helped colleagues without seeking praise. He acted honestly, even when shortcuts were tempting. He faced challenges calmly and thoughtfully. He began to notice that these choices were not easy, but they became natural as he practiced them. Consistently, he felt a growing sense of inner strength and purpose. And so his life continued with subtle tests and meaningful experiences. He realized that true character is revealed not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent actions. He felt a deep respect for the process, and for himself he understood that the path ahead would bring even greater challenges, but that he was now better prepared to face them with integrity, patience, and courage. He felt that the most important changes were happening quietly inside him, preparing him for the moment when everything might change. The days became heavier, with quiet lessons and subtle tests. He felt that something important was coming, but he did not know what it was, as if life had opened a door, and he was standing at the edge, waiting for what lay beyond. He continued his daily work with care and patience. He helped his colleagues without expectation, remained honest even when shortcuts were easy. He began to feel that each day mattered more than before one. Morning, the man appeared unexpectedly. He asked him to walk together through the city. He agreed, and they moved slowly, observing the people around them. He noticed that the man paid attention not just to him but to the small details of life. The way a shopkeeper treated a customer, the way a stranger helped another person, the way a moment of frustration could be turned into kindness. He realized that life was full of small tests that revealed character. During the walk, the man asked him what he would do if someone offered him a chance to change his life instantly with wealth or recognition. He thought carefully about the question, considered the sacrifices and compromises that would be required. He realized that he valued integrity and honesty more than immediate gain. He said he would refuse. He understood now that true success was not measured by reward, but by remaining true to oneself later. That week, a situation arose at work that tested him in a new way. A coworker made a mistake that could have been blamed on him. He had the choice to stay silent or to tell the truth. He hesitated for a moment, but then chose honesty. He calmly explained what had happened and accepted responsibility only for what was truly his. He noticed the respect in the eyes of his colleagues. Even when no one spoke, he felt a quiet sense of strength, knowing he had done the right thing. The man observed all of this quietly, never praised or scolded. He simply watched and allowed him to discover his own values. He realized that this was the most powerful way to learn. He understood that guidance was not always about giving answers, but about creating opportunities to reveal character. He felt a growing respect for the man and for the lessons he was learning. One evening, they sat on a quiet bench and watched the sun set. He thought about the choices he had made recently, about patience, honesty, and courage. He realized that his life was changing not because of luck, but because of consistent right action. He felt a growing awareness of his own power to shape his life through decisions that reflected his principles. A few days later, the man presented a more complex test, arranged a situation where he could gain an opportunity by bending rules or acting dishonestly. The temptation was visible, and the reward seemed significant. He felt the weight of the decision keenly. He considered the cost of compromising his principles. He chose honesty and refused the easy path. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction in making the right choice. Even though it was difficult, he began to notice a change in himself. He was more aware of how his actions affected others. He was more thoughtful in his decisions. He felt a quiet confidence in his ability to handle challenges without losing integrity. He understood that these experiences were not just tests, but preparations for something greater that was coming. During a visit to a local market, the man watched as he interacted with strangers. He noticed how he treated shopkeepers, how he handled mistakes and misunderstandings, how he showed patience and kindness, even in stressful situations. He realized that true character was revealed in these everyday moments, and not just in dramatic decisions. He felt a quiet pride in the person he was becoming. The man asked him to describe a time when he had been tempted to act against his principles and how he had responded. He spoke honestly about past moments when shortcuts had seemed easy, but he had resisted. He realized that these choices had built the foundation of his character over time. He understood now that integrity was not a single act, but a habit cultivated through repeated right actions. One afternoon, he faced another challenge at work. A task required long hours and careful attention. He could have taken shortcuts to finish quickly, but he chose to work patiently and carefully. He noticed that the quality of his work improved, not just for himself but for everyone involved. He felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that effort and patience produced real results. The man observed all of this and later spoke about the importance of courage under pressure. He explained that true strength is revealed not when life is easy, but when it demands patience, honesty, and self-control. He reflected on his own actions and realized that he had grown stronger through these experiences. He felt a growing sense of readiness for whatever tests might come next. During a quiet walk one evening, the man asked him what he would do If someone important asked him to act against his values for personal gain, he thought deeply and said he would refuse. He understood now that choices define a person more than circumstances or rewards. He felt a deep sense of responsibility. To live according to his principles regardless of what others expected. The following days brought new experiences and subtle lessons. He noticed how small acts of honesty and kindness affected those around him. He realized that leadership was not about authority, but about influence through integrity. He felt a growing confidence in his ability to guide others, not by force, but by example. He understood that his actions could inspire even when words were unnecessary. One morning, a situation arose that tested his patience. He was asked to complete a tedious task that others avoided. He felt frustration rising, but he worked carefully without complaint. He focused on quality rather than speed. He noticed that his example encouraged others to approach the task with similar care. He felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that patience and dedication could influence others positively. During another encounter, the man asked him to reflect on the lessons he had learned so far. He spoke about honesty, patience, courage, and the quiet strength that comes from consistent right action. He realized that his character was being shaped not by grand gestures, but by everyday choices. He felt a sense of clarity and purpose, knowing that his decisions mattered more than external recognition. The man then arranged a situation to test his ability to resist temptation. He was offered a chance to gain something valuable by acting dishonestly. The reward was tempting and immediate. He considered the consequences and the cost to his principles. He chose honesty and refused the opportunity. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction in making the right choice, even though it required self-control. He began to understand that these experiences were preparing him for a future where his character would be tested in even greater ways. He realized that life often presents challenges that require courage, patience, and integrity, and that his ability to navigate them would define who he was becoming. He felt a quiet anticipation for the next stage of his journey. During walks and conversations, the man continued to observe. He noticed how he treated strangers, how he handled mistakes, how he remained calm under pressure. He realized that true character is revealed in everyday actions and not just in dramatic moments. He felt a growing awareness of the power of small, consistent actions to shape a life. One afternoon, the man asked him to imagine a future where he faced even greater challenges. He thought about the temptations and pressures that might come. He realized that his ability to remain true to his principles would be tested. More and more, he felt a sense of readiness and determination to face whatever came. With honesty and courage, days turned into weeks, and the lessons continued. He noticed that he was more aware of his surroundings, more careful in his decisions, more compassionate in his interactions. He understood that the tests were not about impressing the man, but about discovering who he truly was. He felt a growing confidence and quiet courage that prepared him for the moment when everything might change. He continued to work and live quietly, applying what he had learned. He helped colleagues without seeking praise. He acted honestly even when shortcuts were tempting. He faced challenges calmly and thoughtfully. He began to notice that these choices were not easy, but they became natural as he practiced them consistently. He felt a growing sense of inner strength and purpose, and so the days continued with subtle lessons and meaningful experiences. He realized that true character is revealed not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent actions. He felt a deep respect for the process, and for himself. He understood that the path ahead would bring even greater challenges, but that he was now better prepared to face them with integrity, patience, and courage. He felt that the most important changes were happening quietly inside him, preparing him for the moment when everything would be revealed. The days began with a quiet anticipation. He noticed that everything felt different, as if the world itself had changed. He continued his daily routines with care, but there was an awareness inside him that something significant was about to happen. He worked patiently and honestly, helping others when he could, and remaining calm in situations that tested his patience. He felt a sense of quiet strength growing inside him. One morning, the man appeared unexpectedly. He invited him to walk together through the city. He agreed, and they moved slowly, observing the people around them. He noticed that the man paid attention not just to him, but to the small details of life. the way a stranger helped another person, the way a gesture of kindness could make someone smile, the way patience and honesty shaped ordinary moments. He realized that life was full of lessons that revealed character in subtle ways. During the walk, the man asked him a question that stayed with him. What would you do if you had the opportunity to change your life instantly with wealth, recognition, or power? He thought carefully. He considered the sacrifices and compromises that might be required. He realized that he valued honesty and integrity more than immediate gain. He said he would refuse. He understood that true success was measured not by what others could give him, but by what he remained capable of being. The following week, a situation arose that tested him more than any before. A colleague made a mistake that could have been blamed on him. He felt the temptation to remain silent and avoid conflict. He thought about the lessons he had learned about integrity, courage, and patience. He chose to tell the truth, calmly explaining the facts. He accepted responsibility only for what was truly his, and did not seek credit or blame for what was not his. He felt a quiet sense of strength, knowing he had acted rightly. The man observed all of this quietly. He never praised or scolded. He simply watched, allowing him to discover his own values. He realized that this was the most powerful way to learn. He understood that guidance was not always about giving answers, but about creating opportunities for people to reveal their true character. He felt a growing respect for the man and for the process that was quietly shaping his life. One evening, they sat together on a quiet bench, watching the sun slowly disappear. He reflected on the choices he had made in the past weeks, about patience, honesty, courage, and the small acts of kindness that had grown into habits. He realized that his life was changing not because of luck or outside intervention, but because of the consistency of his right actions. He felt a quiet clarity and strength rising inside him. The man then presented a challenge that required him to face temptation directly. He was offered a reward that could improve his life if he chose an easier path by bending rules or acting dishonestly. The temptation was visible and strong. He felt the weight of the decision. He considered what he had learned. He realized that his life and character were more valuable than any reward. He chose honesty and integrity, refusing the easy path, and felt a deep satisfaction in making the right choice. He began to notice how much he had grown in awareness and confidence. He was more attentive to how his actions affected others. He was more thoughtful in his decisions. He felt a quiet assurance that he could handle challenges without losing his values. He understood that these experiences were preparing him for something beyond what he had imagined. During a walk through the marketplace, the man observed how he treated strangers. He noticed how he remained patient with shopkeepers, how he corrected mistakes without anger, how he treated small difficulties with calmness and care. He realized that true character was revealed not in grand gestures, but in the small, everyday actions that defined life. He felt a quiet pride in the person he was becoming. The man asked him to describe a moment when he had faced a difficult choice and how he responded. He spoke honestly about situations in the past when shortcuts or dishonesty had seemed easier, but he had resisted. He realized that these decisions had built the foundation of his character over time. He understood now that integrity was not a single act, but a series of choices that created a life of quiet strength. One afternoon, a situation arose that tested his patience. He was asked to complete a tedious task that required focus and endurance. He could have rushed or cut corners, but he chose to work carefully. He noticed that his diligence influenced others who were watching and encouraged them to follow his example. He felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that effort and patience produced real results and inspired others without words. Man observed all of this and later spoke about the importance of courage under pressure. He explained that true strength is revealed not when life is easy, but when it demands honesty, patience, and self-control. He reflected on his own actions and realized that he had grown stronger through these experiences. He felt a growing sense of readiness for whatever tests might come next. During a quiet evening walk, the man asked him what he would do if someone important asked him to act against his values for personal gain. He thought deeply and said he would refuse. He understood that choices define a person more than circumstances or rewards. He felt a deep responsibility to live according to his principles regardless of what others expected. Following days brought experiences that tested his resilience. He noticed how small acts of honesty and kindness affected those around him. He realized that leadership was not about authority, but influence through integrity. He felt a growing confidence in his ability to guide others not by force but by example. He understood that his actions could inspire even when no words were spoken. One morning, a situation arose that required careful decision-making. He faced a problem at work that seemed impossible and stressful. He could have acted selfishly or taken shortcuts to solve it quickly. He paused and thought about the lessons he had learned. He chose the harder path of patience, diligence, and honesty. The solution took time, but it was effective and respected by everyone involved. He felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that right action was more important than convenience. During another encounter, the man asked him to reflect on all he had learned. He spoke about honesty, patience, courage, and the quiet strength that comes from consistent right action. He realized that his character was being shaped not by grand gestures, but by everyday choices. He felt clarity and purpose, knowing that his decisions mattered more than recognition. Man then arranged a final challenge. He created a situation where he could gain a valuable opportunity. If he acted dishonestly, the temptation was strong and immediate. He considered the consequences and the cost to his principles. He chose honesty and integrity, refusing the opportunity. He felt a profound sense of satisfaction in making the right choice. Even though it required self-control and courage, he began to understand that these experiences were not simply tests, but preparation for the next stage of his life. He realized that life presents challenges that require courage, patience, and integrity, and that his ability to navigate them would define who he was becoming. He felt a quiet anticipation for the moment when everything would change. During walks and conversations, the man continued to observe. He noticed how he treated strangers, how he handled mistakes, how he remained calm under pressure. He realized that true character is revealed in everyday actions. He felt a growing awareness of the power of small, consistent actions to shape a life and influence others. One afternoon, the man finally spoke. He revealed who he really was, a powerful billionaire who had been testing him quietly over weeks and months. He explained that he had been looking for someone with integrity, patience, courage, and character rather than wealth or skill. He said that the choices he had made proved he was rare and valuable, not because of his circumstances, but because of who he truly was. Man was shocked. He had never expected recognition. He had lived quietly and honestly without expectation. He realized that his consistent right actions had been noticed and valued. He felt a mixture of humility and pride. He understood that life had given him an extraordinary opportunity, not because of luck, but because he had lived by his principles. Billionaire offered him opportunities he had never imagined, work and trust and responsibility that could change his life. He accepted not because he sought reward, but because he was ready to live fully according to his values. He understood that the journey had prepared him for this moment. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and readiness for the challenges and opportunities. Had his life changed in ways he had never imagined, but his principles remained the same. He continued to act with honesty and patience. He treated others with kindness and respect. He faced challenges with courage and calmness. He realized that wealth and opportunity were not the measure of his life, but that his character was the true foundation of everything he could achieve. And so his journey reached a turning point. The tests were complete and the lessons were clear. He understood that true success comes from consistent right action, patience, integrity, and courage. He had learned that life rewards those who remain true to themselves, even when the world ignores them. He felt a quiet confidence that his life was now on a path guided by principles and strengthened by experience.